So I am a Gen Xer. I was born in 1970, so I think that makes me one of the elders of our generation. I'm not entirely sure what the timeline is. Probably should have looked that up before I started this video, but at any rate, I have to say that since I've started thinking about moving into retirement and started this channel, I've been looking for other voices on YouTube and beyond who are of a similar age and of a similar mindset. And the one thing that I have found to be overwhelmingly obvious of our generation is that we are doing retirement very differently from our baby boomer counterparts. So these are just my opinions, and you can agree or disagree. I would love to know either way in the comments. I find that baby boomers are probably the last generation of folks who get older in a very sort of templatized way. It's what you would expect, right? Like they were the last generation to be able to get good jobs, whether they went on for higher education or not. They're the last-ish generation to be able to buy houses at, a reasonable price and live a decent life, whether they were one family income or more. I also think that they're the last generation of the traditional nuclear family and just the last generation of traditionalness in every sense of the word. Because now, as our generation, Gen X, starts to think about retirement and what they want in the second half of life, it is looking so much different. And this is just based on the people that are sharing ideas, sharing content, sharing what they're doing. And it is definitely different from the boomer vibe. Number one, we are not afraid to blow up whatever our lives have looked like to this point in order to make our lives look different. Whether we're deciding to retire or we're deciding to create an entirely new career and just keep going, we're not afraid to blow up our lives. And I'm probably a very good example of this. It feels like a lot of us, if, for example, we want to retire early and it's just not financially feasible where we currently live, and let's use the United States as an example of that because of healthcare and cost of living and all of these different things, I'm seeing so many people of my age and generation who are exploring retirement overseas, whether it's permanently or just for the next 10 years until they can come back and get on Medicare. I am seeing a generation of folks who are getting older and they're not afraid to blow up their lives. I'm also seeing a lot of, van life folks who are Gen X and who are like selling their 4-bedroom houses for something much more smaller and agile where they can get around and enjoy their lives while we're still young and able to do that. And then, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of folks who at this point, rather than thinking about retirement, are like, I want to do something completely different. So I'm going to sell my house, blow up my life, and go back to college to train for something entirely new. I don't see a lot of baby boomers doing that, but I definitely see a lot of Gen Xers doing that. And I think it probably comes down to the way we were raised, right? Like we were always very independent minded. We were always just very independent and borderline feral. So why would that change in retirement? Oh, and of course, we're going to recreate retirement or being retire-ish so that it works for us rather than trying to fit into the mold of previous generations. These are my opinions, of course, and I am biased, and I would love to know what you think. I also think that watching this generation age, we're doing it differently than the baby boomers. I feel like the 55 of today is a lot younger than the 55 of, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. I feel like we maybe look younger, we think differently, and we are thinking outside of the box. And again, this might just be me being biased, but that's what I see. And also the sample size of people that I'm seeing are people that are willing to put their neck out there to share content, share what they're doing with their lives. So yes, I do acknowledge that there's probably some Gen Xers out there just rolling into retirement like everybody else did. But I'm so refreshed to see that a lot of us are doing things differently. And I love that so many of us are doing things our own way and recreating retirement so that it works for us rather than us feeling like we have to fit into some sort of proverbial box. And the one other thing I will say about being on YouTube is it's just so nice to watch other people my own age and older talk about what it is they're doing, how they're thinking about aging, and how they're thinking about the next chapter of their life. Because personally, I'm not really interested in the thoughts and ideas of like your average 24-year-old, no offense to them. It's just we're at a different stage of life and we have a lot more maturity and wisdom. So the things that matter to us are going to look very different than these younger generations. And I love that so many of us are putting ourselves out there to become content creators, to either make that a new career or just share for fun, to share our ideas and see who else thinks the way that we do, which is pretty much where I'm at. So anyways, those are just a few thoughts I have on getting older as a Gen Xer. And like I said, I know that I'm biased, but I really do think that we are making a mark in terms of what retirement is going to look like going forward. And I'm sure millennials will do their own thing too, but what we're doing is pretty freaking awesome. And the reason I wanted to share these observations is that I think that sometimes we can get in our own head about retirement and what the next phase of life should look like. And we hear what we should have saved at this point in life. And maybe we think, I'm so behind and it's never going to work for me. I'm never going to be able to have this. And knowing what people have in their retirement accounts is only one side of the equation, because the other side of the equation is what you actually need in retirement. And some of us don't need a lot. Some of us have already paid off our house. Some of us are willing to blow up our lives in the expensive areas that we live and try something different for 5 years or 10 years in order to have our time and freedom back. And I just wanted to share these thoughts because retirement doesn't have to look traditional. In fact, it shouldn't look traditional. It should look custom made for you and the life that you have and the life that you want to move into as you get older. Because let's face it, we've all worked long enough and we're getting old enough that we have lost the majority of our F's that we're there to give in the first place. And at this point, we just want to be happy. So I hope that I've given you a little bit of hope or perspective in sharing that. I would love to know your thoughts on whether or not you think Gen Xers are redefining retirement. And on that note, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.